Don't tell me there are rules, man. I want to be an anarchist. But I can't. I don't normally like to give guidelines that are inflexible. This isn't a math class where there are a lot of definite answers. And that's just one of the things we have to deal with being writers. But I can give you some guiding principles. I got four of them. So let's talk about these writing principles. The first one I like to call the cell phone manual principle. I know this is hard to believe, but a lot of electronics actually come with instructions manuals. I know this is going to be hard to believe because nobody ever actually looks at them. But next time you buy any piece of consumer electronics, it would be really instructive if you did look to see the kind of information they have. Cell phones in particular. If you get a cell phone, chances are, if it has a manual, you're only going to look at it if you need to know one or two key things. And the people who make manuals know this. So they have stuff separated out into easy steps. Lost connection, here's what you do. Replacing a battery, here's how you do it. And they do this because they know most people are only going to go look at one or two key things. They still have to write the document as a cohesive whole, and they have to act as if somebody is going to read the whole thing. But they also have to have it ready to for people who are only going to need that one part. This is a good rule of thumb for the type of writing we do in here. People might read through your entire document once, or they might just go in and look for a specific thing. You have to make the information as easy to retrieve as humanly possible. Headings are a big part of this. How you organize the paper is a big part of this. I need to be able to find information, so breaking stuff into a lot of discrete sections is a very good idea. The second principle is the McDonald's principle. Yes, I mean this McDonald's. You know what a McDonald's menu used to look like in the 70s? This. Yeah, it's not a great picture, but I really couldn't find a whole lot of great pictures from this time. First, try not to freak out over just how blatantly cheap everything is. I mean, really? You can get a large fry for 46 cents? I don't know what it is nowadays, but I know it's a lot more than 46 cents. But you also need to notice that the menu is rather small. This was done on purpose because McDonald's didn't want people having to sift through a large, huge menu. It was harder to get people in and out if they had to try to think about it too much, and it was harder to train the workers to make 15 million things or to ring up 15 million things. This was what McDonald's was originally about. Limited amount of items so they could get what you wanted to you quick. They wouldn't have to spend a lot of time training anyone. Now, of course, the McDonald's menu doesn't look like this at all. And there's a good reason. Well, one, a lot of stuff has been added. A lot of stuff has been added. They sell all kinds of things that you would never think McDonald's, if you were in the 80s, would ever sell. But they still don't want you to sit and stare at the menu for a long time trying to assemble your perfect meal. People, when they order a McDonald's, order, I'll have a number 3 with Coke. This is what the value meals do, is it makes it brain dead to order. Everyone knows their number. Very few people will put together their perfect meal from the individual items. A number is easier. Like two number 3s, a number 4, and a number 7 to hold the mushrooms. Something like that. McDonald's wants to still make the process as easy and as quick as humanly possible. They want to walk the reader through the process. When you go into McDonald's, they don't want you to have to think about it. It's a menu designed to keep people from going, when they look at a large menu. McDonald's principle is you treat people as if they need leading. You walk them through the choices and you make it as easy as possible for them to choose. So you don't have to have people sitting and trying to figure stuff out. Make your stuff easy to digest. Principle number 3 is the shiny object principle. And I know you know someone who's distracted by shiny objects. Everybody's got a few people. I had a friend of mine in grad school, Dan. Dan was the kind of person who could talk to anybody for any reason for a long time and make them feel like they were instantly a friend. Dan also had the attention span of a used ketchup packet. One time we went to a football game with Dan, and sometime between giving them our tickets and getting to the stands, we lost Dan. I pointed this out to his wife, who was like, "Don't worry about it. You know Dan." I'm like, "Yeah, I guess so." So we were sitting up in the stands, and about 10 minutes later, I found Dan. He was at the other side of the stadium holding an in depth conversation with somebody in the opposing team's band. This is just how Dan was. If you didn't lead him every single step of the way, he would go all over the place because he had a hard time keeping his attention. You have to treat your reader this way. If you give them a minute to get distracted, they're going to get distracted. Right as if your reader has the shortest possible attention span, and then you are going to be making sure they stay on track. There's another way to look at the shiny object principle, though, is that if we can make that shortest track look to be the most attractive thing humanly possible, people are going to go out of their way to line up for it. And I mean literally. You see this line? These are people waiting for an iPhone on the day of release. Yeah. I'm not really sure why anybody would want an iPhone on the day of the release, because I know that those things are buggy as living hell until you get at least 3 or 4 updates in them, but people will line up for them. Principle number 4 is probably going to need a bit more explanation than the others. The BLT pizza principle. By now, you probably heard me say something about the fact that I worked at Little Caesars Pizza for quite a while. And if you've ever worked in a restaurant, you know very quickly you get bored with everything the restaurant has. If you want a meal, you don't want to have the same thing over and over again. If you're working at a pizza place and you've been there 6 months, is a pepperoni pizza really going to have any level of appeal for you? Probably not. So we always went out of our way to make weird stuff. I had one guy who, whenever I'd do a daytime shift with him, he'd stop by a grocery store and buy a kielbasa, would slice it up, cook it partway through the oven, and make a kielbasa pepper and onion pizza. We did all kinds of things, but there was one pizza in general that everyone in management knew how to make. It apparently was a menu item like a decade or so before, and it had long since quit, but everyone liked it. It was the BLT pizza. The way you did a BLT pizza is you took a pizza crust, put garlic butter on it, cheese, bacon, cooked it like that. When it came out, you put diced tomatoes and shredded lettuce on top and squeezed ranch dressing all over it. I think it originally had mayonnaise, but we didn't have mayonnaise. We had ranch dressing, so it was great. Basically, you think about it, it's a cross between a pizza and an open-faced BLT sandwich. It was really good. I don't know if I'd like it nowadays, but I'm a vegetarian, so the whole bacon thing is a bit weird to me. But back then, I loved it. Well, I was in management and I'd work a lot of closing shifts and I'd often make food for me and the closer. And the same thing happened every time. First time I made a BLT pizza for somebody, they would talk about how gross it was to have lettuce on a pizza. There's no way they're going to like this. Then they'd try a piece. Then they would eat like three-quarters of the pizza. Then they would demand that they were able to take one home to their parents. And then they would come in the next day and said, I really had to convince my mom and dad to give it a try, but now they told me I'm not allowed to come home from work unless I have a BLT pizza. The thing here is that it looked weird, so everybody was skeptical. And you had to find a way to sucker them in. If you treat your readers as if they're skeptics and go out of your way to prove your point, you were going to make your argument so much more explicit. You were going to make the purpose of the document so much more clear that they don't have any way they can possibly doubt you. And that's the BLT pizza principle. So those are the four guiding principles. I think that they give you a good guideline on how you have to approach your relationship with the reader. You can't assume that the reader is going to be the perfect person who follows you all the way through. There are going to be those types of readers. The problem is, if you're only writing for them, you're going to miss everybody else. You need to write for the person who needs to be drawn along, who needs to have it shoved in their face. The people who would get it anyway are still going to get it. This way you bring everyone along. See you in the next video.